Some stories begin with a storm. This one began with a blizzard so fierce it seemed to swallow the world whole. In the small, snow-blanketed town of Maple Ridge, the wind howled through the night, rattling windows and piling drifts against every door. Most families huddled inside, grateful for warmth and shelter. But for one little girl, the storm was about to change everything. 8-year-old Emma had always been different. While other children played video games or watched cartoons, Emma spent her afternoons reading animal rescue stories and dreaming of becoming a veterinarian. Her heart was as big as the sky, and her compassion knew no bounds. That night, as the snow fell thick and fast, Emma sat by her bedroom window, watching the flakes swirl in the glow of the street lamp. It was then she saw them two shapes stumbling through the snow, barely visible against the white. At first, she thought they were shadows, tricks of the wind. But as they drew closer, Emma's breath caught in her throat. Two dogs, shivering and soaked, their fur matted with ice, struggled up her driveway. One was large and golden, the other small and black, both clearly lost and desperate. Emma's heart pounded. She knew what her parents would say. "It's too dangerous, Emma. You can't just bring stray animals inside." But as she watched the dogs collapse against the porch, their bodies trembling, she couldn't turn away. She grabbed her thickest blanket, tiptoed downstairs, and quietly unlocked the back door. The cold hit her like a slap, but she didn't hesitate. "Come on, it's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. The golden dog lifted its head, eyes full of exhaustion and trust. The smaller dog whimpered, barely able to stand. Emma wrapped them both in the blanket and coaxed them inside, careful not to wake her parents. She led them to the laundry room, where it was warm and quiet. She found an old towel, dried their fur as best she could, and filled a bowl with water. The dogs drank greedily, then curled up together on the blanket, their bodies pressed close for warmth. Emma sat beside them, stroking their heads, whispering promises that they were safe now. As the storm raged outside, Emma stayed with the dogs, her heart swelling with pride and worry. She didn't know where they had come from or what they had endured, but she knew one thing: she would protect them, no matter what. She finally drifted off to sleep, curled up on the floor beside her new friends, unaware that her act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would shake her family and the entire town to its core. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, Emma awoke to the sound of voices outside. She rubbed her eyes, confused. Then she heard it, the unmistakable crackle of a police radio, the crunch of boots on snow, and the sharp, urgent knock at the front door. Emma's heart raced. She peeked through the window and gasped. Police cars lined the street, their lights flashing in the morning gloom. Officers moved quickly, surrounding her house, their faces grim. What had she done? Why were the police here? And what secret did these two freezing dogs carry that would bring the world to her doorstep? Emma's parents rushed to the door, confusion and fear on their faces. Her mother, Sarah, opened it to find Officer Daniels, the town's police chief, standing on their porch. His breath hung in the icy morning air. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, his tone serious. "We need to ask you a few questions. May we come in?" Sarah nodded, stepping aside as the officer entered. Emma hovered at the edge of the hallway, her heart pounding. She glanced back at the laundry room, where the two dogs she had rescued still slept, completely unaware of the sudden chaos. Officer Daniels scanned the room, his eyes sharp and observant. "We're looking for two dogs," he announced. "A golden retriever and a small black terrier. Have you seen them?" Emma's father, Tom, shook his head. "No, we haven't. Why? What's going on?" But before Officer Daniels could answer, a soft whimper echoed from the laundry room. The officer's head snapped toward the sound. Emma's heart sank. She had to speak up. Stepping forward, her voice was barely a whisper. "I found them last night. They were freezing outside. I just wanted to help." The officers exchanged a look. Officer Daniels knelt beside Emma, his expression softening unexpectedly. "You did a brave thing, Emma, but these dogs, they're not just lost. They're the reason we're here." Emma's mind raced. What could two stray dogs possibly have done to bring the police to her door? Officer Daniels explained the situation. Last night there was a break-in at the old Miller house on the edge of town. The thieves were interrupted and fled into the storm. We found tracks in the snow, 2 sets of human footprints and 2 sets of paw prints. The dogs were with them. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. "But they're not bad dogs. They're scared." They needed help. Officer Daniels nodded in agreement. We don't think the dogs are to blame. In fact, we think they might be the key to finding the people who broke in. The tracks led straight to your street and then just disappeared. We believe the thieves abandoned the dogs when they realized they were being followed. Emma looked over at the dogs, who were now watching the officers with wary, untrusting eyes. She knelt beside them, gently stroking their fur. They're not thieves. They're just lost. Officer Daniels offered a small, gentle smile. We know, Emma, but we need to find out where they came from, and if they can help us catch the real criminals. As the officers examined the dogs, Emma noticed something strange. The golden retriever wore a faded collar, but the tag was missing. The little black terrier had a small scar just above its eye, a sign of a past injury. Both dogs seemed incredibly anxious, flinching at any sudden movement. Emma's mother knelt beside her, wrapping a supportive arm around her shoulders. You did the right thing, sweetheart. We'll help the police figure this out. The officers took photos of the dogs and asked Emma to describe exactly what happened the night before. She told them everything, how she'd seen the dogs shivering in the snow, how she brought them inside, how they had slept soundly beside her all night long. As the morning wore on, curious neighbors gathered outside, drawn by the flashing lights and the growing sense of mystery. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some hailed the dogs as heroes, others feared they were dangerous. But Emma knew the truth. She had seen the fear in their eyes and the gratitude in their wagging tails. These dogs were survivors, not criminals. As the police prepared to leave, Officer Daniels knelt beside Emma one last time. We're going to take the dogs to the station just for a little while. We need to check for microchips and see if anyone is looking for them. Don't worry, we'll take good care of them. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. Can I visit them? Officer Daniels smiled. Of course. And if no one claims them, maybe you can give them a forever home. Emma nodded, a tiny flicker of hope igniting in her heart. She watched as the officers gently led the dogs outside, their heads hanging low. She pressed her hand to the cold window pane, whispering a promise only she could hear. I'll see you soon. I won't let you be alone. As the police cars drove away, Emma felt a strange mix of sadness and determination. She didn't know what secrets these two dogs carried or what dangers still lurked in the shadows of her quiet town. But she knew one thing for certain. She would do whatever it took to bring them home. The next few days were a blur of worry and waiting. I found myself visiting the police station every single afternoon, bringing treats and blankets for the two dogs I'd found. I decided to name them Lucky and Shadow. Lucky for the golden retriever, whose gentle eyes seemed to hold 1,000 stories, and Shadow for the black terrier, who followed me absolutely everywhere I went. It wasn't just me who was falling for them. The officers were growing fond of the dogs, too. Lucky would sit quietly by Officer Daniels' desk, his head resting on his knee, while Shadow would patrol the station hallways, his tail wagging nonstop. But even with their sweet, gentle nature, the mystery of where they came from lingered in the air. One afternoon, I was sitting with the dogs in the station's break room when Officer Daniels walked in, holding a small device. We finally got the microchip results, he said, and my heart skipped a beat. Lucky and Shadow were both registered to a family in the next town over the Harrisons. I felt a wave of relief, but then he continued. But here's where it gets strange. The Harrisons reported them stolen 2 weeks ago. My eyes widened in disbelief. Stolen? By who? Officer Daniels shook his head. We're not sure. But the Harrisons said 2 men broke into their house, took some valuables, and disappeared with the dogs. The same men who broke into the Miller house, most likely. I hugged the dogs tightly, pulling them close. So they're not just lost, they're heroes. They escaped and found their way here, Officer Daniels nodded. That's what we think. And there's more. The Harrisons are coming to pick them up today. They want to meet the girl who saved their dogs. My heart soared and ached at the very same time. I was so incredibly happy the dogs would be reunited with their real family, but a part of me was already sad to say goodbye. That afternoon, the Harrisons arrived. They were a kind couple, and the moment they saw Lucky and Shadow, tears filled their eyes. They knelt right down on the floor, hugging the dogs close, whispering words of love and relief. I just watched, my own heart feeling so full it might burst. Mrs. Harrison turned to me, her voice trembling. Thank you, she said. You saved our family. We thought we'd never see them again. I smiled shyly. They saved me too. I was scared, but they made me brave. Officer Daniels explained the whole story: how I'd found the dogs, how I'd cared for them, and how my actions had ultimately helped the police track down the thieves. The Harrisons gave me a huge hug, promising they'd visit and send lots of pictures. As the sun began to set, it was time to say my goodbyes. Lucky licked my face one last time, and Shadow pressed his wet nose into my hand. I whispered to them, "Be good. I'll never forget you." The Harrisons drove away, and I could see the dogs' heads poking out the back window, their tails still wagging. I stood there in the fading light, with tears streaming down my face. I felt both empty and full, my heart aching with loss but also with an immense sense of pride. But the story wasn't quite over yet. That night, my phone rang. It was Officer Daniels. "Emma," he said, "we caught the men who stole Lucky and Shadow. Thanks to you, they're in custody. You helped solve 2 crimes and brought a family back together." I smiled through my tears. I had always dreamed of being a hero. And now I finally knew what it truly meant. In the weeks that followed, Emma became a local hero. The town newspaper ran a story with a big headline: "Brave Girl Saves Freezing Dogs, Helps Police Crack Case." It was wild. Neighbors would stop her on the street just to say thank you. And kids at school always wanted to hear the story of the mystery dogs, again and again. But for Emma, the real reward wasn't the attention. It was knowing that she had truly made a difference. She kept a small framed picture of Lucky and Shadow right on her nightstand. Every time she looked at it, it was a little reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can completely change the world. The Harrisons, the dog's real family, became regular visitors. They'd bring Lucky and Shadow over to play in Emma's yard, and it was the best thing ever. The dogs would just race through the grass, barking with pure joy, and Emma would laugh and run right alongside them, their barks and her laughter mixing in the air. She and the Harrisons became really close friends, bonded by the crazy adventure that had brought them all together. Emma's parents were incredibly proud, of course, but they also admitted they learned something really important from all of this. They realized that sometimes rules have to bend a little when compassion is involved. They started encouraging Emma to always follow her heart, to trust her instincts, and to never, ever be afraid to step up and help someone in need, whether they have 2 legs or 4. A little while later, Officer Daniels came to visit Emma's class at school. He stood at the front of the room and told everyone the story of the brave girl who helped solve a big mystery. He finished his talk with a message that stuck with everyone. "Courage isn't about being fearless," he said. "It's about doing the right thing, even when you're scared." Emma sat at her desk, listening, and her heart just swelled with pride. It was a feeling she'd never forget. She knew she would always remember that freezing night when she brought 2 shivering dogs inside. And she'd definitely never forget the next morning, with police cars surrounding her house. It taught her that kindness, courage, and a little bit of love can change lives, sometimes in ways you could never, ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories like this one. And always remember, heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're just little girls with really big hearts and the courage to open the door. Thanks for watching.